Okay, my outstanding friends, should be very, very interesting. I've been studying Iceland for a very long time because it's an anomaly on its own accord. But second, they're having a volcanic eruption imminently, it looks like. And it's the top stories in the news is this Icelandic explosion, which could be absolutely catastrophic. Now, let's look at it. Why is this happening? What is a volcano, first of all? And I'm going to tell you right now, they do not understand volcanoes. They think the Earth is just a complete ball of magma inside, and every now and then they just pop up here and there. That is not the case. Okay, so this is the story. It's being covered by everybody. It's the top story going on right now, other than all these wars. You got Fox Weather, CNN, National Geographic, Reuters, CBS News. They're all covering this. And this is going to be a major event, should it occur, and it appears it will. They've evacuated the people. We're going to take a look at it and see what I can point out. And I have a different take on it than they do. So I'm going to start right off with the big guns. Okay, my friends, to me, this is the big guns. You see this black spot in that little cavity, and you see this cavity here and this red spot all over, and you see the yellow and black and so forth. That is a cave in Iceland. All right, this is from Reuters, just came out an hour ago. They're trying to do what they can do to do whatever they can do, which is virtually nothing, about this huge crack that's opening up, and they're afraid they're going to have an enormous volcanic eruption. That could very well be. And this is just within the last hour or so. They're expecting this momentarily. They've evacuated all the people from this area, and they're sitting back and watching right now. But like I say, they have already expected it to have happened. They're having hundreds of earthquakes literally per hour. Thousands within the last few days that are just rumbling under the ground. Well, something is moving, obviously. So they're quite concerned. Now this is also Iceland, and this, as you can see, is all this red stuff running down here. What's going on there? Why is this so green looking? What is all these little hex columns? They say, oh, that's volcanic intrusive magma. It's just coming out of here and making these columns. I disagree with that. Why is there red up over here as well as red over here? All right, and it's not everywhere. Why is it just here? And why is this so green growing on top of this area here? All right, that's again Iceland. Like I said, big guns blazing. I'm just going to blurt it right out now. That is biology. That's right there is a vein, and that right there is an artery. The red is artery, the black is a vein. Veins turn really hard. It creates what they call magnetite. The red blood is hematite, and that's a good stuff, but it runs out. You see that cavity? They run right out. Here's another one on Earth that is right here. That is an artery, and it's running all out, and it just hardened up after a long time. These guys are looking at it saying, wow, what is this? And this is all layers of tissue, just like you have in your body. I can't explain the sizes of these creatures. They were written about in the ancient text, and they are true. They're true. And the Earth is nothing but a corpse. And all of these little columns that they're showing up here, let me show you what they actually are. This is what they actually are. It's tendons. Wherever you see those little columns like that, that was from a tendon. And they get these big tendons, and they come down to smaller little clumps, and then a smaller one, and a smaller one, smaller. And they come down to these tiny little fibers. And at the end of every fiber is a ball. And the balls are all over the world. That's another thing nobody can ever explain. You see, they come down, and all these balls are in here, and eventually this little straps run out. This is the development of a tendon. And inside the tendon, it makes this gnarly looking stuff inside here. And that anchors. And then the straps come running out, and they break right off here. A lot of times you'll find them with little cavities in them. Now, this is all biology. This is all biology. And look at this. This is a heart. You see that? That's a heart. Now, a heart has a ton of extra little holes and valves and tubes and things coming out of it, as well as the major plumbing at the top. This is the major plumbing. You see that heart valve right there? You see that? I'm going to show you one that's a little bit bigger than that. And here it is, right there. That's that heart valve. And here's a guy climbing in that area, and this woman is here ready to catch him when he falls or something. I wouldn't be doing that myself, but this is a heart valve. That's the heart valve. And this is the tubing that runs around it, and there's the valve. And what the valves do is they only let blood go one way or go the other way. That's what they're there for. And the veins have them everywhere in your body. Veins have clamps every so often in all the tubes. And what happens is the veins can only go back to the heart. The red blood can go anywhere it wants because it's charged up, it's ready to go, it's got good stuff in it. But by the time it hits the capillaries and squirts through that last little bit of tubing, so tiny, then it's in the vein side, done, case closed, it cannot go back. Two different systems, but you know, they work together. Okay, so like I said, these are the big guns. What do you do with giant dead animals? Well, composting dead animals, you can do that, and here's how you compost them. If the temperature reaches above 150 degrees, you could get an explosion of spontaneous combustion. The risk increases. So what do? You have to turn the pile over and over and let that heat come out and then add moisture to it. And that will let it break down into its molecular components without exploding. Well, you can't do that in Iceland. But it is biological decomposition. It's creating these huge pressures, and it's going to spontaneously combust. Okay, my friends, the beauty of this is I can prove exactly what I'm saying, that these gigantic things were real. This is a heart, and this is a heart valve. This could be tested. It's right here on Earth. But better than that, I say everything there is was alive at one time, including asteroids and planets and everything else. Planet Earth was a biological creature. Now, and this is my claim. So what is in space? Well, here's something that's in space. It's called Asteroid Psyche. It's a metal asteroid. Metal. You see these cavities here? You see all these little tiny holes and so forth around all these little places? It looks like it's been hit by a bazillion different meteorites. Well, let me show you something. This is Psyche. Now, the reason I say I can prove what I'm saying, because this is Bennu. Bennu, they landed on this, and they grabbed a sample, and they brought it back to Earth, and it is here on Earth right now. And I'm going to tell you what it is. It's blood. And they, when they landed on it, it kicked up all this blood everywhere, and they just freaked out. They said, why is it doing this? Well, I can tell you exactly why. This right here is the tendonous material, and that is the bloody material right next to the heart valves. And here it is on an actual heart somewhere, right there. This does not erode away. This is tough stuff. That's, kind of cheap. And there's the big tubes. And then it's got a million other tubes. You can't see them, but they're all over the place. Here's what it looks like. You see these tubes coming out of here? Tube. They're everywhere. Tubes everywhere. And this can crack, and the top can come right off, and you'll be right on top of the ventricles. And a friend of mine did that with a rock that he found, and here it is right here. He hit it right there, and it cracked right on that seam, and all the plumbing came off the top, and he's into the ventricles right here. And you see the different colors? That's the colors of blood. And they change colors as they go through your body. And here's after it sat around for a while. These are all the different plumbing spots. And it sat around for an hour or two, and it turned black. That's oxygenation, deoxygenation, whatever caused it. Now, again, these two here, they're identical. These are virtually identical. I mean, they're so close to being exactly the same. It's just incredible. Now, what else? This one here is a little more easy to see because the Psyche looks like it's a lot more burned up. It must have been too close to some very hot source. This one is not like that. It's more pristine. Now, what are we looking at here? That right there. You see that? That's one of the tubes coming out. That's not a crater. These are the valves. And these other things, you see these two down here? At the bottom, you see that one has a tube coming out. These are arteries and veins, the two different colors. There's little tubes coming everywhere in the heart. They're just literally everywhere. And that is that tendinous material, the white material, and then the red is here, and then you get into the tubes. All right, just like I showed you right here. This is a real heart. This is what it is. Now, they claimed there was battles in the heavens, and these creatures were just gigantic. Enoch said they were 2.5 miles tall. And they took his texts out of the main Bible-ish stuff, the religious stuff. He wrote about actually speaking to God. And he said this was what happened. They mated with the human women, and because they had giant DNA, they just went huge. Now, you say, how could a giant mate with a human? They could change their size. They could become anything they want. If you look up Ovid, Metamorphosis, it says that the main theme of his whole work, which was an opus magnus on steroids, it was the huge history of since creation to his time, which was right around Julius Caesar. And it starts right out by saying, I'm going to talk about, well, let me just show you exactly what it said. You see this? Ovid's decision to make myth the primary subject of Metamorphosis was influenced by Alexandrian poetry. These are the writings of these ancient, they call them poets. They're not poets. They were historians. And he used that information. He said object of play and artful manipulation. No, he was writing truth. I mean, these are his books. The creation, the ages of mankind, the flood, Deucalion, who was Noah and his wife, Apollo, Daphne, Io, Phaeton, Callistro, Raven, Crow, all of these, Mercury, Europa, Jupiter. This is all the ancient Greek gods and all of the ancient Greek writings about these creatures. And I mean creatures. They weren't exactly like us. And he goes down through the whole thing, all the way down to Troy and Achilles and, Hercules and all of them, right down the whole thing, Romulus and Remus. And this is the whole idea is metamorphosis. This is what it starts out. Listen to this. Metamorphosis is like a caterpillar turned into a butterfly. All right, these could change to be anything they wanted. It says the metamorphosis or transformation is the underlying theme amongst the episodes of the metamorphosis. They all could change their bodies into anything they wanted. Ovid raises its significance explicitly, right in the first couple of words. He says, in nova fert animus mutatus decere formos corpora. I intend to speak of forms changed into new entities. So they were something and they changed into something else. Accompanying this theme is often violence, a lot of violence, inflicted upon a victim whose transformation, whose change becomes part of the natural landscape. The creatures ended up being the landscape. The theme amalgamates the much explored opposition between hunter and the hunted, thematic tension between art and nature. They're starting to throw all this stuff in about it. And it is the hunted and the hunter. They were all wars, and they were all series of domination and taking over and forcing. It turned very bad because of the bad gods. That was what was written, and it appears to be all true. Now, the first thing everybody says, well, how would all these body parts get into space? Well, in the New Testament of the Christian Bible, the book of Revelations describes a war in heaven between angels led by the archangel Michael against those led by the dragon, identified as devil or Satan, who's defeated and thrown down to the earth. That could well be Typhon they were talking about, because he is there. He's in North Africa. Now, these were battles in the heavens, and everybody described them. All the India texts and so forth, they all had the same thing about battles in the heavens. And they all had stories about giants. They all had stories about dragons. Just nobody had anything different. They all had the same stories. And Velikovsky found out they had them all at the same times. which was not long ago. It was only 1500 BC or so that was the main event. And then there was a bunch of other semi-main events, but the real bad one was about 1500 BC. And the dragon was thrown to Earth, and the gigantic battles in the heavens. All right, so here's what my claim is. Bennu, which they landed on in one of these craters here, is just nothing but a heart, which is nothing but saturated with blood. So all of the debris that's going to be in these craters is just going to be blood. It's going to literally be bloody blood cells and everything else. And I know exactly what the chemistry is going to be. Exactly. And I have already posted it and sent it to NASA and Goddard and all of them. And I said, what you're going to find is blood. And that's what they will find. And that's what that is. And it's exactly the same as this heart. All right. And when they dropped in there, they found out, wow, this is a lot different than we thought. All right, see, this is asteroid Bennu's surprising surface revealed by NASA spacecraft. They popped down on there, grabbed a sample. They thought they were just going to dig it out like digging up out of mud or something. No, they kicked up all of these blood cells. And here it is right here. They'll be talking about it right now. Here we go. All right, so they came up here and they could see all this pebbly looking stuff on there.
Chaotic past that may hold clues to the origins of life.
It does.
In October 2020, a NASA spacecraft called OSIRIS-REx touched down on Bennu and collected a sample for return to Earth. Scientists had expected that this touch-and-go event, or TAG, would have little impact on the asteroid. After a slow descent, the sampler head would briefly make contact, inject a puff of gas, and capture a handful of material. Perhaps it would also leave a small divot at the sample site.
That's what they had expected, to just leave a little tiny spot. But what happened was all that blood and blood cells took off. They just, because it's all nothing more than powdery blood cells.
A subtle footprint in the soil, or so it was thought. When images of the TAG event beamed back to Earth, they were far more dramatic than anticipated. Despite its slow touchdown, OSIRIS-REx had punched through the surface and set off an explosion of loose material. Tons of rocks and pebbles were ejected, radiating outward in a wall of debris. The pictures were stunning, but why did Bennu's surface behave so unexpectedly?
It's nothing more than eroded, dried up, bloody cells.
The answer involves cohesion, an attractive force that can bind molecules together.
Well, they're blood cells, so after this it's all speculation. Okay, my friends, this is the area we're talking about in Iceland. Now, you see this bump here and you see that bump here. Let's look a little closer. This is what's cracking, splitting open. Now, what I want you to look at carefully is these structures here. You see these little pieces coming across like this? Those are muscle fibers, as far as I can determine. Those are muscle fibers, and this was, it could have very well been a heart. All right, you see how big this round circle here is at the top? If you don't look at it and understand it right, this could have been one of these huge, valves. And this is another part of, and look at the colors. Here's the key. This is what I look at as the colors. You see this, the red, the black, and the yellow? I showed you that's what's inside of a heart. It's exactly what's in a heart, the red, the black, and the yellow. And they're right up against each other. Now that could not, it could be something else other than a heart. I don't know. But I find it very interesting to see how puffed up this is, just like what would happen if you couldn't turn over the bio stuff that's underneath. It's all composting, basically, and it's rising. And it's going to split. Now, will it seam open and just sort of overflow, or will it be explosive? That's the key. Now, they don't understand volcanoes. They think it's the whole Earth is just a solid bunch of iron melted around inside, and every now and then some pops up here and there. That's just not the case. It's biology. And if you look at this from far enough away, you can see I believe that's going to be one of these valves. And the whole thing here appears to be working together. As these could be the three big valves at the top. I don't know. All right, the more I look at it, I keep seeing more and more of these valves. And there is a ton of them in a heart. These four right here look like they could be these four here. Hold on. All right, now, but there is a ton more. I mean a ton. All right, look at this. These are all little valves and holes all over the place, and the main body is here now. I mean, it's just completely covered with holes and valves, and this all looks like the same sort of stuff. This one here, I can see no possibility that it's not some form of festering blood. This is blood, red, black, and yellow, like that, all three together right in the same place. To me, I'm looking for a heart here, or at least some form of an organ, and it has all the features of a heart. All of these things here together, and this whole thing could have been the heart. This whole thing, and that's the bottom of the heart right there, and this is all the plumbing at the top. All right, if I turned it upside down, all right, there's your heart right there. Now here's a heart right here. This one here turned all into crystal almost. But this is basically the same thing. You have a ball. The ball at the bottom is where all your blood is, and at the top is where all your plumbing is. I think that's a heart. You see that? That's Comet 67P. This was in 2014. They actually landed a lander on there to sample what was there, and it was all biology as well. Now, here it is giving off, it's what they call the coma, which is the gases they thought was just dust blown off. It's not. What it is it's boiling the body fluids that are still in this. They still have body fluids, and they are boiling it out here. This is the artery. These are the little blood vessels, the little ones that feed all the tissue up in here. And that's why they're squirting off in the direction of wherever the blood vessel was headed. Now, this is the ball, and this is the shaft, and this is a hip, I believe. And here's what it looks like. Here's another shot showing the ball coming up the stalk, and then the hip bone coming over this way, and that's where they fracture. They fracture right along this line. And this is what it looks like if it did fracture. Right there's the ball. Sometimes they fracture here, but this one fractured out here. All right, there's two different ways. They fracture all kind of different ways. But anyway, that's Comet 67P, and you see this huge flow of gases out? That's coming out of here. This is 500 feet across. This thing is absolutely gigantic, 500 feet across for the blood vessel, for the artery, just the artery, 500 feet. And that's what's blowing out all of this huge amount of gases. And space smells like steak. When the spacewalkers come out of space and they take off their suits, they say they smell just like seared steak. And metals, because this is nothing but metals and just like gas coming off your gas grill, the same smoke, and it's being boiled out of here because the sun is hitting it just exactly the right way, and when it does, they gas off. All right, that's not dust. All right, and this shows you. You see this circle here? Pay attention to the details. You see that circle? Each one of these is a bundle, and if you looked up strolling under the skin, it shows these little bundles and the blood that's in them. And this is where they landed down in here, and they took a sample of the stuff, and it was all biological. And they just it's all. They say organic. Well, organic means biological. And again, you saw all the stuff. I have so much more to go over that it's just, I'm never going to be able to do it in one shot. But, I've showed you all these tendons. Remember the tendons here up in Iceland? These are tendons. All right, sometimes they're muscle fibers too. The muscle fibers and tendons, two different fibrous structures, but they have their own little specialties. And tendons only give a little bit. Now, this is a tendon emplacement. Right here would be where the tendon locks in, and these are all the straps running down. These are what I call abrupt transitions. Well, I do anyway. And they break at a certain distance out. They get less and less mineralized, and then they turn into muscle. Now look real close at this. Look real close. You see these little edges around here? That's the slurpees, small leucine-rich proteins. So they can all, it's sort of a gooey bundle, but it's tough as hell. Tendons are very, very, very tough. And I have so much on this, and this is an abrupt transition right here. There's an abrupt transition. The same as this abrupt transition here. This is selenite. But you see that right there? That's identical, same abrupt transition. And then it goes into some other gooey, this right here, where do you see this? This is these hex fibers, and then it goes into a glue at the top, and then the glue glues into the muscle, which is gone. Here it is in its giganticness. Hold on a second, I had it somewhere around here. Here it is. There's that stuff. There's that stuff right above the tendinous stuff, and it's this sort of stuff here. It's a gluey substance, right? And it glues one to the other at that abrupt transition. It's amazing, and they'll break right off just as flat as a pancake. But this, they call it entabulature and calamata, or I don't know. They come up with all kinds of names because there's no way they can explain these things. Now, this is a different style tendon. This is an Achilles very long tendon. When they break, you have this wrinkle zone on both sides. You see this? Devil's Tower is a heel, and it's got a wrinkle zone right at the top. It has all the little tendinous fibers and the wrinkle zone at the top. And it's a heel. I'm going to go over all these things. I got so many videos on this stuff, and nobody's paid attention because it's just spectacular to think that it could possibly be true. But like I said, this is up here in Iceland, and so I'm going to get back into all this. Look at these people looking up saying, wow, what the hell is that? Well, good question. I have the answer. It is biology, monsieur. Now, there's other stuff here that really freaks me out too. Don't forget, now these are the tendons. And then every one of these goes down into a little tiny ball. And that's what locks these in. And originally, above here would have been muscle. And the muscle would pull in and out, and the tendon would be just a little springiness in there. Now, there are things that freak me out, especially this right here. This was when they cut the slabs for those walls down in Peru. This is down in Bolivia. All right. This was obviously wet. At the same time, this was wet. This is some kind of tracked vehicle. It looks like tank treads here and here and here and whatever this is. And I'm saying this, it goes back thousands of years. I don't see that as being recent, not whatsoever. So we have a lot of talking to do about a lot of things, and we're going to be getting onto Google Earth and looking at things all over the place. And again, I have so much stuff to show, and pretty much I have almost everything here. Like even this hair follicle, I show this all the time because it's perfect. It's easy to show. Here's the size of this hair follicle. You see that right there? That's where this muscle attached right here. All right, that makes your hair be able to stand up on end. That obviously is the hair shaft, and it has a flat side to the hair, which means if it was from a curly-haired person, they tell me that. Now, this is the sebaceous gland. You see that? All right, and then of course the root, the hair goes up, and down at the bottom you have the vein and the artery coming in. And that's quite a bit bigger than ours. So these creatures were the same, just I believe exactly what Enoch wrote. They were miles tall. And I'm thinking there was quite a few of them. And there was a bunch of them in space. Now, whether they were living there in space or, I don't know. I have no idea at this point. All I can tell you is I am a material scientist. I show you the materials. You look at the materials, you make your own decision. How did that happen? Well, and then when I go back to the ancient texts, they tell you how it happened. They tell you the whole story right down the line. You read Hesiod and Apollodorus and Ovid, and there's a whole batch of them that wrote, and everybody laughed at them. They said, "Oh, these people are just making up big stories like they're comic book people." No. It was all based in the historical documents and facts. Okay, we got a lot of talking to do. We need to get some kind of a forum going where I can get some information from people. There's a lot of stuff I don't know about I'd like to have help with. But I do think this has already happened. The woman and the dragon. This is Revelations 12. A great sign appeared in heaven. A woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet. She was just absolutely gigantic. A crown of 12 stars on her head. Pregnant, and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. Another sign appeared in heaven, and an enormous red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on its heads. Its tail swept 1/3 of the stars out of the sky and flung them to earth. There were supposedly 600 watchers. 200 of them were swept to earth to just to have a party on earth by this dragon. He swept 1/3 of the stars, and the stars were the 600 watchers. 200 of them decided to sign a pact with this dragon and come down to earth. The dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth so that it might devour her child the moment he was born. And that's what the dragon did. He ate all the children because it was prophesied that one of them would kill him. So he ate them. She gave birth to a son, a male child, who will rule all the nations with an iron scepter. In my mind, that was Zeus. And the child was snatched up to God and to his throne before the red dragon could eat him. The woman fled and hid in a wilderness in a place prepared for her by God, where she might be taken care of for 1,260 days. It's 3.5 years, I believe. Then war broke out in the heavens. This was already happened, I believe, and this is what created all these body parts. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But he was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down to earth. The ancient serpent called the devil, or Satan, who leads the whole world astray, was hurled to earth, and his angels with them. Well, let's take a look at what is on earth. All right, after all the reading and all the research I did, I have come to the conclusion this is Typhon, and he is the great red dragon that was hurled to earth, and his throat was cut by Zeus with his great and mighty sword. And this is what he looks like outlined here. This is just runoff. The rest is his body, the red flared eye. Now here's what he does look like right here on earth. There's his body. There's the throat coming down, all the scales. This is just red blood runoff. This right here is where his throat was cut by Zeus with his great and mighty sword. See the red and the black? I always point to the red and the black. Now, there's his red flared eye. And this is all the stuff he was spitting down at the fish he was trying to kill. And that was also in these same texts. So here he is right here. Here's our dragon. He runs all the way across North Africa. All the way across. This is just his neck. Then we get to his body, which is here. These are his legs. And his tail runs all the way out to here. This is still dragon-scaled tail. These are dragon scales. You see that? This is blood that ran off. This is like, it runs down into that area and then it just filters out. That's the runoff, the bloody runoff from his tail. Everything has blood in it. So all the way up here is his head. This is a gigantic fish who he was attacking, and it said this in the ancient text. It said that he was chasing the gods, trying to attack them, and they turned themselves into animals. Zeus turned himself into a ram, and this was a fish, and he was attacking a fish. Now, I'm not sure who the fish was, but all the gods turned themselves into animals to try to hide away from this gigantic killer. And he was spitting stuff out here that was just the nastiest stuff you ever saw. And it came out of his beards. You see, this is his head. Here's his eye. There's the beards that come down. Dragons have these beards. And this is where that stuff squirted out of. Look at this stuff. It's nasty. You see that? And that's what attacked the fish. You see it coming running down here? And it all streamed down here. All coming down. Look at it combusting all over. Like it's almost like on fire. Well, I guess it was on fire at one time. And it hit his fin right up here. That's the fin. And it kept going into his vital flesh right here. That's eaten right away from that toxic mix, whatever it is, venom. And I can actually see the lymph nodes are being destroyed by that venom. And this appears to have been an event that happened all at one time, and this must have been completely coated with water, and it all ran out here and actually created the Cape Verde Islands. It piled up here and then eventually ran around the outside edge. This is an alluvial plain. It's flat as a pancake out there because this is just nothing but mud ran off out of here. Sand and mud and debris. And that's what Plato said. He said when Atlantis collapsed, they will never speak of mud again, so much mud ran out. And I believe this was Atlantis. The Eye of the Sahara. I mean, it sure looks, and I'm going to tell you another thing, it was actually an eyeball at one time of some kind of creature. I don't know what. But this is exactly what the eyeball of these creatures of a creature looks like. And I think they might have used these little rivulet-looking things for channels to come in and out of the rings. All right, it looks like they're like little channels coming in and out. But I've looked at this carefully, and up in here, I believe, is the optic nerve. There's a symmetry to this that's the same as some creature's eyeball. All right, and he said it was right outside the straits, and there is the straits right here. And this is a controllable straits. You could garrison this on both sides and let only in whoever you wanted in and out. So you could really, really control the Mediterranean Ocean or the Saharan Ocean or whatever it was in here. Because at one time this was all, they find whale bones and everything all over the place in here. So they, well, how'd they get there? Well, there was an ocean at one time, that's how. So we got a lot of thinking to do and talking about. And this Revelations thing, I'm telling you, that's already happened as far as I'm concerned. And if you read the ancient texts, you have to go back. You got to go back to Apollodorus. Even though it just, when you read about it, Earth gave birth to 100-handers. A creature had 50 heads and 100 hands. And then all of these cyclopses, all that stuff was real. Hercules, Achilles, all that stuff was, as far as I'm concerned now, that's true history. That's not mythology anymore to me. So that's where I'm going to leave it today. As far as Iceland goes, it could erupt catastrophically, or it could just sort of bubble out of there. I'm sort of interested in what will happen there. But I, at this point, feel that is a heart. That's my opinion right now. So let's continue on, because I have a lot more to talk about in relation to these ancient texts. What is the meaning? If Revelations already happened, everybody's waiting for Revelations, well, that's something that we should talk about. There's a lot of things to talk about here, a lot. All right, so we'll talk about them. I love you all. Just keep paying attention and spread the word. Don't be afraid to talk about this. A lot of people, I'm scared to talk about it. They're going to think I'm crazy. Well, you're not the crazy one, my friends. People that can just walk around in circles and be happy, that to me, that's insanity. So don't cut yourself short. If you can see this, you are above the rest of the world. Trust me. Most of the world will never see this, and they'll see it all day long, every day, and they'll never see it. And that's also been written about too. They'll never see with their eyes, they'll never hear with their ears. And there was all the wise men were praying to see the things that you can see now, and they never saw it.